Minister Sisulu bazasidominate abajob ubahlathi apha. National Heritage Council Chair, Freedom Park Council members, members of the Sobukwe family, leaders of the PAC, National Chairman of the PAC, Comrade Sibusiso Xaba, Walugoqwana, ebulisa leaders of PAC through the Secretary of Province. That come lokufuna ucontesta wena lo mfana lo. Ndiyabulisa nonkosi and true wena bulisa zonke leaders of PAC, veterans of the PAC. Bonu advocate Mavamala, no Professor Kilingwe Mayende, who is also the special advisor of the minister. President Tsietsi uliqala lo mbutho mfondini bayayiyeka ngabomu and ndim ndento sakwaziyo uba ungupresident. Representatives of Robert Sobukwe Foundation, representatives of Steve Biko Foundation, representative of the Walter Sisulu Foundation, comrades, friends, ladies and gentlemen. So to ngakulibala. Mfundisi usekhona, fe ungimfana esithi awukho apha. Abantu abangakhonziyo abamazi umfundisi onganxibanga la gama. Usekhona umfundisi. Ndiyanibulisa nonke officials amapolisa nonke ndiyanibulisa imedia molweni. There can be no better honor bestowed on a Pan-Africanist and a disciple of Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe than to be given the opportunity to address an event honoring him. He was the greatest son of the soil. Thank you to the organizers for affording me this opportunity to deliver the keynote address. Thank you to the Sobukwe family for affording us the opportunity to visit your family home and to once again pay our respect to Prof and his wife, Umama Veronica, at their gravesite. The few words that we will share here today can never do justice to the character, contribution, and commitment of Prof Robert Sobukwe. Let me from the outset use the honorific Prof, which, as we all know, is a title bestowed on him by the Pan-Africanists because of his lecturing post at Wits University. This university has given Sobukwe its highest academic recognition by posthumously giving him the degree of Doctor of Laws. However, in the University of the Liberation Struggle of the Azanian people, Prof has surpassed the attainment of the rank of the most senior teacher, as he was the embodiment of expertise on the Africa's place in the world and Africa's history. This qualifies him for the title of professor, which is a title well earned and deserving for his contribution. We are here in Reniet, the birthplace of Prof. Much has been said and written about the early life of Prof, his education at Hilltown and at Fort Hare University. A deeper and more focused reflection and research on his written work is needed. From his days as the SRC president to his contributions to the political publication known as The Africanist and possible later written work post his release from Robben Island. I encourage Freedom Park and especially the Sobukwe Foundation researchers to do more in this regard to preserve the legacy of Sobukwe. Sobukwe was a man of powerful and impactful words. It was through his words that the apartheid government realized that Sobukwe targeted their policies and programs for direct opposition and dismantling. They knew his words were not the usual vague petitioning and visual begging for better living conditions from his oppressors. The apartheid and colonial government became contented with what they expected as protest letters and petitions from the political leaders of the African majority. It was no surprise that a person with such a clear political thinking as Sobukwe would align himself with the 1949 program of action that advocated for the restoration of the land to the African majority. Sobukwe, like all Africans, knew that they were a conquered people that were violently and brutally dispossessed of their land. Sobukwe studied the course Native Administration at university and was horrified by the extent of the oppressive legislation where African people had to endure. He was jolted into a deep resentment over the virtual slavery of African people in the land of their birth. It was his confronting of one such law amongst his many other political activities that won him a place in the hearts of the African majority and in history. The infamous and dehumanizing PAC laws. On the 21st March, just last Friday, South Africans celebrated Human Rights Day as a national holiday. With the exception of the few political conscious, this day was celebrated without mentioning the name Robert Sobukwe, with no reflection of the impact of the PAC laws, and very few mentioning the massacres at Sharpeville and Langa. The anti-PAC law campaign was the brainchild of Sobukwe. As president of the newly established Pan-Africanist Congress of Tanzania, he had earlier launched the status campaign that was aimed at ending the psychological subservience to the settler colonialists the African majority had subjected themselves to. There was no greater weapon of oppressing the African majority than the hated passbook or Donbass. Africans literally carried this dehumanizing chain of oppression and slavery on them daily. By targeting the passbook and calling for the dismantling of the PAC laws, Sobukwe mobilized the African majority in a manner and at a pace never conceived or done before. By peacefully returning the PAC books to the police stations, the campaign achieved the goal of rapid mobilization and breaking the culture of fear experienced by Africans through the police stations. The impact of the anti-PAC campaign was felt in all sectors of apartheid society, where the white establishment were living in peace and comfort before. They now lived in fear. I'm sure that if we research the origin of the phrase Swart Gafar, it must have emerged then. The markets were shaken and the economic boom of the time took a major hit. This is well documented. Security forces were on high alert, and in the immediate days following the Sharpeville massacre, the PAC laws were suspended. A little known fact that shows the enemy was defeated. This was sheer political genius, and it was not lost on the apartheid government that Sobukwe was the mastermind. They characterize him as enemy number one. The usual response of imprisonment was laced with a more sinister plan. They employed the tactics of erasure. They wanted to erase Sobukwe from the memory of the people. Killing him would have made him a martyr and he would never be forgotten. But erasure, they hope, was like slow poison. The first act of erasure was to separate Sobukwe from all other political prisoners on Robben Island. His presence among them would be a source of inspiration, a source of education, and a source of resistance. And Sobukwe would have his own university at the expense of the apartheid government. But political prisoners did see him on Robben Island. When they passed his home or his house as they were marching to work in the quarry, they would be punished if they tried to speak to him. He would pick up sand from the ground and release it through his fingers. This was his way of inspiring them, as this gesture meant free the land. This was the most powerful message he gave when he could not speak to his comrades. His first imprisonment sentence of 3 years passed, and the possibility of a free Sobukwe could not be tolerated by the apartheid government. The racists then introduced the Sobukwe clause, where his imprisonment was extended by an act of parliament without any due legal process. Again, this Sobukwe clause alone allows for further research. Was anyone else before or after him ever subjected to such form of erasure from society? Like I never know city where yedwa ofana no Sobukwe. Wabe kungekho nento ayelele ngayo kuSobukwe. This was, however, not the end. Upon his release, he was cynically banished to Kimberley because it was exactly halfway between Soweto home and Sobukwe family home in Graaf Reniet. He was to be banished to a community that did not know him, hoping that he would be isolated, forgotten and erased from history. But even there, the apartheid police failed. Not only did the people of Kimberley get to know Sobukwe, they embraced him. Hero worship is not good, especially not for the ego of the hero. But there was something about the decency, the values, and the spirituality of Sobukwe that moved people. They wanted to be him. They would take such great risks. Even Steve Biko did break his own penning orders to go and meet Sobukwe. I'm not only talking about the magnetism of his character and smile through which people were attracted to him, but it was that he made them feel more human and more worthy of themselves. This stems from his strong upbringing under the firm and loving hands of his parents. It stems from his sincerity, and it was strengthened by his belief in God. He would constantly pray, and apart from praying for the well-being of his family and comrades, he prayed for those who differed with him, and he even prayed for those who considered him their enemy. One of the hallmarks of his banishment to Kimberley was that despite his banning order, he set up a legal practice through which he addressed the problems of the people. He lived the slogan, serve, suffer, and sacrifice. Let me address the subject of African unity. Sobukwe was very passionate about the progress and unity of Africans and of the continent. A few weeks ago, we had the sad and unfortunate killing of South African National Defence soldiers in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Our soldiers were there to ensure security for fellow Africans and as part of a peacekeeping force of neighboring African countries. This killing and the many civil wars on the continent shows that the ideas and values of Pan-Africanism espoused by Sobukwe had been abandoned. Locally, do we as students of Sobukwe account for the growing Afrophobia here in Azania? That we tolerate the disgusting and derogatory words such as Amakwerekwere and the call Mabahambe. Beyond a unified African government, there is an ideal of a united African people. This is an ideal which we must urgently translate into a program of action. Let me say a word about the progress of Africans here in Azania. It is sad and unfortunate that our local politics have become adversarial, that we see ourselves in constant competition with fellow Africans. We find it very difficult to uplift and celebrate the success and progress of fellow Africans, be it in politics, in business, in culture, and even in sport. We have this song of praise for Sobukwe, Calm Down the Spirit of Sobukwe. I wonder if you would say I wonder what you would say of the society in which we are living today if you were to come down and be with us. Sobukwe would not be able to imagine that after 31 years of black majority rule in place, that race is still a major source of inequality in this country. He would have wondered about his teachings that there is only one race, the human race. I am sure that Sobukwe and his peers of the 1949 program of action would be shocked to know that after 31 years, after the fall of apartheid, 70% of the land is still in the hands of white minority. Sobukwe would chastise all of us for the decline in morality in our country that has resulted in the extraordinary high levels of gender-based violence brought on a big way through the abuse of substances, especially alcohol. How do we explain to Sobukwe that the African majority continues to be the poor, living in greater squalor than when he left us? Sobukwe was a teacher. It would pain him to know that we have the financial resources and yet our educational outcomes are so weak. That as an avid reader of books, he would wonder why our children are doing so poorly at reading. Sobukwe taught us to show the masses the light and they will find the way. But for the past 30 years, the lights have been both literally and figuratively switched off for the African masses. True leadership demands complete subjugation of self, honesty and integrity, uprightness of character, courage and fearlessness, and above all, a consuming love for one's people, exclaimed Sobukwe. To all of us holding any form of public office and leadership position, this saying of Sobukwe should be enough of an encouragement and advice and guidance when we implement all the new laws and policies that impact on the lives of masses we claim to serve. This saying should guide us in situations where our people rightfully complain that we have failed them. In honoring Sobukwe, we must be relentless in reversing these social and economic problems faced by our people. Where the apartheid government and anyone else, for that matter, thought they could silence Sobukwe, his presence continues to be felt. It is up to us to make his words have impact. Honoring and remembering Sobukwe through name changes, through memorials and lectures is praiseworthy, but the greatest honor would be in our daily actions in restoring the dignity of the people that he loved and who love him. And thank you very much.